compliance with the open records law?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gillis.
Here.
Councilmember Hartung.
Here.
Councilmember Hooker.
Here.
Councilmember Riesler.
Here.
Councilmember Schneider.
Here. Next, we have the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Somebody take a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's adopted. Next, we move on to public comments. Are there any public comments? If there are, please identify yourself for the record.
You got three around there, so.
Hearing none, we don't have any scheduled appearances this evening. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. The following matters may be acted upon by the City Council utilizing a single vote. Individual items which any member wishes to address in greater detail or as a separate item on the regular agenda may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any council member. The only thing we have on there this evening is the minutes from a regular City Council meeting from January 26, 2022.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's approved. Next, we move on to the business agenda, mayor's report. Just one thing to talk about on the report tonight. We'd like to congratulate the swimming group on a wonderful event and the other folks that participated from the police department, the sheriff's department, they had from the local dairy group. I know there was a few other local businesses. They had a really nice crowd up there. A lot of sledding and stuff going on and a few other things. I think everybody really enjoyed it on Saturday. And no, they did not talk me into sliding, doing any sledding. So we survived that. So that's all I've got. Any questions? Okay, nothing came off the consent agenda. Administrator's report, Administrator Rasmussen.
So I have a couple items as well before I dig into the ARPA funding update a little bit at the end here. But the only other items I have tonight is you heard me talk about this pilot arrangement that we've had with, that we're working on with the Housing Authority. I think it's fair to say that they have a meeting next Tuesday. They're going to be talking about a contract that I think will work out well for the city. And then I would anticipate that we'll have a finance meeting sometime before the next council meeting on the 23rd. They're asking, they would like to have this all wrapped up by the end of the month, and between ourselves and Waterville and Pepin, I think we can. So again, looking forward to that and getting that to rest and moving forward. One other item I wanted to bring up, we've had some comments regarding, when you say some political commentary in the form of yard signs and flags and that type of things. I just wanted to just kind of touch base with how we're handling some of those. The yard signs so you're right, at this point, I did send out a letter to a gentleman that has a yard sign. You probably know where it is. It's somewhat anti-president. After I sent it though, and talking to Stan a little bit too into some of these topics, we are in the election cycle again. Basically, the election cycle is defined as basically from the time of nomination papers to the end of the election. So at this point, the city has no control over any sort of election signs. They're eligible to be out in whatever form, and so basically there's nothing we can do about them, even with some of the vulgar nature of some of it. So at this point, that's where they'll stand. Regarding the flags, you've seen some flags around town, already some flags on vehicle. Again, Stan, you can chime in any point on this here. We really have no authority over those at all. There's a lot of discussions, First Amendment rights, and some other communities that have invoked their, or even have ordinances of good standards and things like that, and they've all failed. So again, frankly, we're just not doing much about them because we can't. So just wanted to get that out there in case you're hearing from other people and things of that nature. And but again, back to those election signs, once the election's done, you've got 2 weeks after, then again, we'll enforce that for those to be taken down. Yeah.
I can just add one thing to that. Communities had, like Scott said, have tried to pass ordinances restricting some of those things, but it's a First Amendment violation. You can't restrict any sort of content. So even though it's offensive and you call the police department, you call City Hall because it's an offensive sign that your neighbor's flying, or a flag that they're flying, there's nothing the police department can do. I'm not going to get the city of Durand sued over telling somebody to pull their flag down. So there's nothing we're going to be able to do regarding those signs. We can create an ordinance regarding signs and things like that, but you can't have it as a content-based ordinance. You could say you can't have a sign bigger than 3 by 2, but you can't say if your neighbor calls and they're offended by your flag, you got to pull it down. It's got to be a non-content type of ordinance.
So those signs just for people being in this cycle of election, or is it anybody?
Well, there's been, if you recall, we had a sign regarding our governor at one point, as he comes down. Basically, is we can't even control it. Clearly, those are election-related signs. So it doesn't matter that there's no presidential election, for example, things of that nature. It's fair to say we should just leave them alone during the election cycle and address it afterwards.
I would imagine you can have any kind of sign because anybody can be wrote in. Sign for anybody, as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think that's part of the trend. Again, it's such a broad category that, and well, I'm advertising for a party. That's not a person. The next one, there has been some updates to the ARPA rules, and again, the ARPA being the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, again, recall that the city of Durand has been allocated just under $180,000. The county's been allocated 1.4. They're going through a process right now, basically taking requests from a number of communities or people, organizations, departments, and the whole thing of that piece. The reason I wanted to bring it up a little bit tonight is, so this interim rule came out back in May of 2021, where they were the allocations and basically allocating funds to take care of COVID-related items primarily. But at that point, the Treasury Department sought feedback, and basically we're taking commentary from citizens and governments, and even you've heard me talk numerous times, and probably some others as well, that are still trying to figure out what are eligible uses. In our case, the water and sewer infrastructure was clear as a bell, but the Treasury has spent a lot of time in the last several months basically coming up with some, answering questions and coming up with more guidance. Basically, they came up with, just in the end of January, they came out with a 400-plus page document. They also had a 40-page overview of all of that. I will send you all the links to that and let you look at it at your leisure. But basically, they did a lot of clarification. I just want to touch base, and I know when I brought this up, I think at the last meeting or in a previous meeting, Steve, you were asking about, remind us what those categories are again. So I thought I'd take the time to go through some of those and really how I think it might affect the city of Durand. So the categories again are replacing lost public sector revenues, that basically we lost out on as part of the COVID-19. From the, again, giving a good example from the county side of things, counties collect sales tax. Every county lost sales tax, so that's probably the best example that way that they could use theirs. The broadest category, public health and economic impacts. I mean, the public health was pretty clear. Setting up vaccination sites and things that the governments did, those were all eligible expenditures. The economic impacts is just extremely broad. I mean, go down to citizens, organizations, nonprofits, things of that nature. I guess for our case, though, the final rule did also clarify a little bit more on the uses of capital expenditures, and I'll touch on that later as I think it pertains to us. They also talked a lot more about those that are quote-unquote disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, lower income groups, things of that nature that they really wanted to see some of these monies flow to. The premium pay basically was also discussed. That was part of the original. Some clarifications on that. At some point, I think I remember, Steve, we had that discussion at the conference that the guys said, well, the only people that we're giving premium pay to are our poll workers and our election people, and we weren't even sure that qualified. But they've clarified that now they do qualify. So basically, any municipal employee qualifies. Now, getting to the point of whether that work they do is essential, one of the other things they clarified is government work, right? They had to clarify that in order to be an essential employee to qualify for premium pay, you actually had to be working with the public. You couldn't have been working remotely or working from home. That doesn't qualify. It seems odd that they had to note that, but again, and put it all in black and white. The other thing that came up, FLS exempt employees, management staff, things like that, do not qualify, and neither do volunteers. So basically, again, as an example, even if we wanted to say, oh, well, I'm going to allocate some money to the food pantry and they're volunteer, you couldn't, because again, these people have to be paid employees on things like that. And the final category is the water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. Clearly, we understand that for the most part for our cases. We knew, or we thought for sure that stormwater was included in that. They clarified that clearly it is. Stormwater is clearly eligible for our case as well. And then again, they went through some pieces that must be an essential service. I'll provide an example later on. There's still complete restrictions for a lot of this ARPA funding. The specific ones is you can't use to offset any tax revenue as a result of a change of a law. Or, again, you'd see governments out there saying, well, there's a change in a local state law or things of that nature that we're going to dump in. You cannot deposit into pension funds. I use my pals in the state of Illinois for the best example there. Their federal or their state system for their retirees is so underwater that they could have used all of their money to dump that in, but they specifically exempt from that. And you can't use it to make debt service payments or settlements or judgments. And finally, they noted that you can't use it to do things that go against the COVID-19 effort. So, for example, you couldn't set up a anti-vaxxing demonstrations or things of that nature. That was a specific question that somebody asked in the final rule. So this is kind of another odd one. Timeline-wise, just a reminder that basically the initial, these for any costs that were incurred after March 3rd of 2021, costs must be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and have to be spent by December 31st of 2026. So again, we have time, clearly. On top of this, the state DOR, Department of Revenue, put out a notice that just keep in mind that if you use some of this stuff, some of this federal money, it could negatively impact, in our case, our levy limits and our expenditure restraint program. Just kind of a side note, I don't see that that's going to be a big deal, but they just put that out there. And again, I know that I'll forward you both the links to both of those documents as you might want to use or take a look at them. So again, these potential city uses, as I came in and we're looking at the final review, some things popped into my head that I'll share. Water, sewer, stormwater side, again, Matt has gone through, we've had some discussions on some potential options there. We talked about, again, essential uses for water. In our case, Matt brought up the water tower inspection that's coming up and the painting that has to be done. The painting that has to be done that might preserve the water tower, things like that, are completely eligible. Painting it purple and putting a panther on it, that probably wouldn't be. So again, just kind of there's a pretty broad section there, but that's just one example. The revenue loss piece, it's funny because they want us to spend these funds. They don't want you to put it in your reserves or anything of that nature. So back to this revenue loss offset, we can use basically some of those funds and identify our revenue offset. And they've clarified that a little bit more too, as far as what's eligible. But then they want you to turn around and they're going to allow you to use those funds for general government items. So some of the things that popped up recently that would certainly be eligible. The police vehicle that we had to replace. In this time frame, you could use what we were offset revenue, we could go to pay for that. Voting machines. Those are coming up. School crossing sign that we put in the budget clearly is an eligible expenditure. So again, we're all good there. So I'll touch on the premium pay piece a little bit. They did, the final rule did basically, and I quote, a premium pay is, quote, designed to compensate workers that by virtue of their employment were forced to take on additional burdens and make great personal sacrifice as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Premium pay can all be thought of as hazard pay by another name. Okay. As I said, all government employees are eligible. I can't sit here and tell you that office staff, even though we were dealing with people, maybe some of the public works, probably were not great personal sacrifice. Clearly they're talking more about public safety employees. In our case, again, the ones that come out, because they're also talking about, pay for lower paid individuals or retainage of individuals. Mike and I have talked about, we talked about a little bit during the budget cycle, our ambulance staff clearly apply for that one, and that's something we probably want to talk about in the future there. Regarding discussion on capital expenditures, again, they outline that a little bit better. At first, we weren't sure that any sort of buildings or capital construction might be eligible. Clearly, I think it would be related to public safety. So where it kind of popped in my head there is the rehabbing of the Proc House. If we were to go forward and rehab that for ambulance staff to stay in, I think that'd be an eligible expenditure. So maybe that's something that we can look at as well, if that's, again, something the council's interested in. And the final one, they also specifically addressed vacant or abandoned properties. Clearly, the Bubba's issue is going to be handled, but if we have any other vacant properties that we want to kind of maybe push along or...
Excuse me,
Yep.
I need to
That's
leave.
right, yeah, Mayor.
President, could you take a sure? Thank you.
So yeah, so that's pretty much the end of that. That's the, again, some other items that, as I went through that final, that, hey, I think this clarified a little bit more that could pertain to us. So just wanted to give you that update, and again, you can peruse these things as you feel fit. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Questions for Scott, anybody? I think we can have a little more discussion on that.
Well, we certainly will see it, yeah, I think, yeah, as I said, we're gonna have a finance meeting coming up, we'll get that on there as well.
And that's final now, right?
That is the final,
Every
yeah,
other
yeah, that's it,
one
yeah.
kind of draft, and now this is final.
Yep, exactly, so that's, they think they've got all the questions answered, and, it's fair to say that nothing else is gonna change in the future, they might provide some clarification, but
Final,
that's
final.
pretty final, yeah.
Any more progress on the letter to the senator for crossing the bridge?
I did talk to Evan the other day, and just a side note, I talked to Evan the other day, so that we're still working on that, but pretty much finalizing it. I don't know if you're aware that the county also is working on a resolution, and my question back to Evan was, do you want it in a resolution form or do you want a letter? And he said, hey, I prefer the letter. I'm happy that the county is doing a resolution, but, so again, they're kind of getting it from both sides, so that, that'll be done yet this week.
Public safety, monthly report. Stan?
You have the monthly report in front of you, just have a couple of things. We had another catalytic converter theft. We had one a week and a half ago or so. I put a press release out on that one, looking for any videos that anybody may have. But we had one today that got reported as well. Haven't been in the office because I just got back from the Chiefs conference, so I don't know a lot about it. The officer just texted me and told me that we had another one. So. We also had a vehicle theft earlier this week. Haven't reviewed that either, just got text messages updating me on it and stuff. So keep your stuff locked up, please. And if anybody has any videos of any suspicious vehicles down here on River Street up by 11th Avenue on their personal ring cameras or anything like that, anything late at night suspicious looking at your cameras, please let me know. I just got back from the Chiefs conference. It was a good conference. It was their largest conference to date as far as attendees go. A couple of the main categories of sessions that I sat in on is transformational leadership during difficult times. Attorney General staff came in and did a legal update, and then the attorney for the Wisconsin Police Chiefs Association came in and did a legal update. We heard a Jamie Klaus case study, which was actually kind of nice to hear because about a year ago we were up in Eau Claire. It was John, Jared, and I. We were up in Eau Claire hearing this same presentation, and we got about halfway through it, and we had a missing person, a missing child here in Durand. And we came down here, missed the second half of the training. They found her like as we're pulling into Durand, but we didn't have enough time to go back and finish the training. So I was able to actually hear the full rest of the presentation as well. So that was nice to hear, kind of lessons learned on how they handled that thing, or that large case. So it was a very good training session. The Attorney General came in, gave us updates and information on what he's working on in his office, and then we wrapped up the conference with leading organizations in crisis. So some very good presentations and presenters. It was very much a beneficial conference for me to be at. Jacob Lindsley is our new part-time officer. He'll be finishing up his training with John here shortly, and he'll be out on his own. That's all I have for updates. If anybody has any questions on anything?
What are you at with people now, I mean, as far as numbers?
Not a single hireable candidate.
Any discussions with other chiefs
I was
about
telling Scott,
the problem and what's being, what we're trying to
everybody
do?
I sat by for lunches and things like that, that was the talk at every table I sat at, was lack of candidates. It was the talk of the conference. There's just dropping police officers, and people are just, large talk. A lot of people were talking about, I can't believe you are still trying to use part-time staff because they can't find full-time staff, so they're like, how are you gonna ever find a part-time staff? So, yeah.
These steps, are they happening 1 AM, 2 AM? Do we know what time they are?
It's kind of a large time frame on the first theft that I know more about.
Yeah.
It was from 4 PM until the next morning at 7, 8 o'clock.
No real idea for sure.
So no idea for sure. We've got a couple of leads, but we just don't have enough evidence here. We've got some people that are suspects in other agencies that we assume potentially could be the same people, but we just don't have enough evidence here. No video or anything.
We're assuming they're coming from outside,
Yeah.
swinging through,
Swinging
grabbing.
through, grabbing.
And they are happening at all times of the last week. I can't remember which day. Buffalo County had one stolen actually on the Wapashaw Dike Road in the middle of the day. Guy was out ice fishing, came back, found his
That'd be
Catalytic
expensive,
and
I
loader
guess, yeah.
stolen.
I
So,
suppose you don't know what's going on until you start your car.
correct.
And I don't know the time frame from the most recent one that we had today.
This is an odd question, but what do they make off of that?
There's precious metals in them, cadmium, platinum. There's 3 that are inside of them that are very valuable. It's like $300 to $400 each.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
In certain models, you'll notice that we see sometimes where one parking lot's full of cars and they kind of like just take a couple. That's because certain models apparently they know are more valuable than others.
Wasn't that first rash on town in my neighborhood?
It was, yep,
Was it kind of Washington area?
yep.
I'm sure it'd be worth going down the block and bring out the other end. The part-time police thing, is there anything we could work with the county and try to cover? Are we, and I know we work with
We had
each other,
that discussion,
obviously.
the mayor, Mark, and Scott and I had that discussion. Sent an email to the sheriff and Matt on Monday, and we're going to have a meeting with the sheriff and chief deputy regarding our talk.
Good.
But so far, we're doing good as far as getting as much as we can get covered. I'm covering a weekend at the end of February here. I was able to get some part-timers that could work during the week, but they couldn't work the weekend, so just getting some stuff worked out. We'll see what, I got to do the March schedule tomorrow, so we'll see what March brings. I did have another chief who actually set up a meeting with me at the conference to do a background on one of our other part-timers, so after lunch we met and talked to him about a current part-timer, so we might be losing another one as well.
Anything else for Stan? Okay, fire department, monthly report, Larry.
All right, so with January being our annual meeting, with that being said, it's our elections. So our elections for officers. So 2022, we did have 2 changes. Our second assistant chief, James Settlemeyer, took over that position. He moved from second captain. And then moving into his position was Trevor Wiesinger, who's also been working as our rural coordinator on the rural side of things. So I believe you guys have to approve them, correct, before
We do, yeah.
before it takes effect. So, we're
Yeah.
gonna.
Seeing it wasn't on the agenda tonight, we'll do it at the next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good.
That
That sounds good.
23rd.
All right, then the only other thing I got is I put together the rural city annual call reports. And I think everybody should have a copy of that. So the first page is just shows the city of Durand. On here you'll see it shows the city of Durand as well as like the township of Maxville, the township of Durand, township of Lima, and the town of Union. So the reason the other townships are on there with the ambulance service with the pulseless non-breathers, with us going with AutoAid with them now. So those actually get tracked as a city call, being that the city is paying for the fire department to be there, or the ambulance services. The town of Union, the reason that's on there, the way we work with our AutoAid and mutual aid, if we are going to like so this would have been in the village of Plymouth City, we'll use Mondovi, Menominee, for example, those go under the city of Durand, just for tracking purposes, just to break up a lot of the mutual aid, because a lot of them are gonna be their rural calls, so the rural gets hit with a lot of them, so that's kind of the rule of thumb we use, is if we're going into a village or into a city, that's how we track that, just to kind of break it up. And there's no charge on there, obviously, you can see for any of that anyways, so it's just all for incident reports. After that, then you just have a list of every single call that we had in the city of Durand, totaling 52, I believe.
Do you know where they get the estimated loss?
So a lot of that's
insurance.
it's guesstimating on our half. So obviously that's kind of one of the hardest parts of all of it. You know, you have a vehicle that gets in an accident. Well, we're just kind of guesstimating off of off of Kelly Blue Book of the price, and then like the value of a property. The biggest property loss in the city of Durand in 2021 was obviously the fire just across the road here at $175,000. And that, like I said, we worked kind of with the insurance company to come up with a ballpark idea, but it's still not exact by any means. So, and I don't know if you want to just thumb through the rural stuff. The only thing I wanted to touch on too is when the rural starts there, you'll see the city of Durand is at the top. So with the 29 calls, the only reason that is on there is if we get a canceled en route, a good intent call, it kind of just automatically defaults back to the city of Durand because it's number 1 on our township counts. So there's no loss, there's no charges, there's nothing on those at all. So, and then if you keep thumbing back through there, so after the Township of Waubee, you get into your incident type reports, and this just breaks down everything from what the call scenarios are to, you know, the canceled en route, the good intent calls, the false alarms. And then after that, there's the aid response by department. So this is either aid received or aid given to other departments. Just kind of a quick breakout. Like if you look at the Durand Ambulance Service, we received aid twice and gave them assistance 11 times and auto-aided them twice, which the mutual aid and auto-aid is pretty much the same thing with that. But compared to 2021, the aid responses and aid given it did go up quite a bit, but it also fluctuates year to year. Some years we'll use it more and some years we give it more. Any questions on that? That's all I got, Scott.
Anything for Larry, anybody?
We'll get an updated list on the officers for
Yeah,
the next meeting.
yep, I have it right here, and I'll get it to Scott and I'll get copies of it.
So no action on new officers?
No, it's not on the agenda, so, yeah, so we'll wait till next time. Yeah, I got to jump ahead of you, Mike, but you have changes as well.
Yeah.
We'll have.
That just occurred
Yeah.
this month.
Yeah.
I'll get that to you as well.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, Larry. Mike, ambulance report?
Sure. Again, it's, my monthly report is in front of you. The only significant thing, I guess, to report is in addition to the fact that Jason Rubilia was voted as the EMT of the year, we still have an issue with our older ambulance, 871. There is an auto-load cot system in the back of that, which lifts the patient and the cot simultaneously and doesn't require any real physical strength from the EMTs other than pushing the button, which costs a lot of money, but it saves in the long run for the potential for back injuries and such. The floor unit that lifts the cot has a battery inside of it that is pretty specialized, as you can imagine, and that battery has failed. Our service technician informed me 3.5 weeks ago, after one of the EMTs discovered it, that he feels it may have been due to the shoreline, which is the power cord supply going to the ambulance as it's in the station, may not have had a connection for a long period of time. The other potential thing that could have happened is as we push the cot into the back of the ambulance, sometimes if we're on an incline, that cot can get away from the individual and slam into the front end of the locking mechanism. If that happens, there is the potential for there to be some damage to the electrical connection. But he wasn't able to determine the actual cause, but those were just some possibilities. So Jeff Dowdy is working on getting lighted pigtails so that we know when there is a connection to the ambulance. So that will take care of that, and I have instructed all the EMTs and EMRs to use extreme caution when they're loading the ambulance into the back of the cot into the back of the ambulance, I'm sorry, and hopefully prevent that. He did call me yesterday, and they are going to be putting in a different battery other than the striker battery, which is in there. Reason being is he informed me that they cannot get a striker battery until probably June or July. And I told him we cannot be without our second ambulance another day, really. In fact, there was a transfer call just about an hour ago that we missed out on because we don't have the second ambulance. He will be putting a different battery in by this Friday at the latest. It is not a striker battery. The striker system is not under warranty anymore, and so it doesn't null and void a warranty because there is no warranty. And our only other option is to rent or lease an ambulance until the battery comes in. And I told him, I said, try the other battery that he is confident will work, and we're just going to go with that. So, because we need that other ambulance in service and available for revenue for the city. On top of that, I would like to definitely thank all of the city council for their approval last year of the auto aid for dispatching of the 4 firefighters for the P&Bs, and thank the fire department for their excellent response with each and every call that we have had. It is tremendous, tremendous benefit to not only the EMTs that respond, but to the patients and the families. We've got a lot of educational opportunities coming up for the EMTs and EMRs that I will be putting out, especially this month. We are going to have training in conjunction with the fire department that is being put on by Alderman Raisler for illicit drug incidents that we run into, and how we can be better prepared for that. I have credentialed 3 new EMTs and an EMR into the service, so that helps boost our numbers a little bit. We did lose 2, unfortunately, in the past month. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was we have just created some new recruitment posters, and you can take a look at them. They are on our Facebook page for Durand Municipal Ambulance. I don't have copies of them yet. I should be getting them tomorrow or Friday at the latest, and those will be distributed all over, up in Eau Claire at the Technical College, where the EMT students will see them all over. So all over town here, surrounding communities and such. So looking forward to that, and hopefully that will make a difference.
We have a response to one, haven't we, Angie?
Yes,
Yep, I passed that information on.
I have that. Yep,
Mike, tell me again, how long has 871 been out of service?
close to a month.
Close to a month. So I understand, I looked at the transports missed and 3 offered, 3 missed. So we can't go on a transport when we only have 1 ambulance. We can't take that one out of the area.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I notified both Advent Health and dispatch that our ambulance was out of service, and they were technically supposed to call for a mutual aid ambulance right away.
So if the ambulance was at the hospital, just brought somebody in, and the hospital said we've got a transfer, we can't do that transfer.
No, we need to keep our 911 rig available.
Okay. And we have people can sign up to be on call for transport, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If there's at this point in time, it probably doesn't work because we don't have
Correct.
2 ambulances.
There's nobody signed up for it right now. Right.
It seems like a couple of years ago, we were advised that there was I don't know if it was a state law, federal law, that we couldn't go on we couldn't do a transport unless we had 2 emergency people on call in town.
Yep,
That's accurate?
that is.
Is that state law, federal law?
I'm not aware. I would guess it's probably state law.
But you're aware of that, and that is
Oh,
in fact
yes.
the law?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The ambulance 871 that's down, that's not the striker system?
They both have striker systems in them.
Okay, so which one do we just put the newest striker system in the new ambulance, correct, or just go in the old ambulance?
Weren't they both installed kind of at the same time when the new ambulance arrived?
We had the other one earlier.
Yeah, it was.
They were 2 earlier.
The other, yeah. I would say the other one went in almost about the time I started here.
Yeah.
It was about that.
That's probably before you.
Yep, just right about that same time that, obviously the first time it was used, and I'm just gonna ask the question, so there's no way you can use the system without, there's no manually you can't?
It's kind of hard to explain unless I physically demonstrated it.
Yeah.
Technically you can, but to safely do it with the system, with the auto load, it would probably take 3 or 4 people to safely get that cot out and lower it. A lot of services have the exact same cots that we have, which are power assist. The carriage, the legs go up and down on their own with just the push of a button. But we also have the auto load system, which takes the entire cot and the patient and picks it up. So without that system, you have to physically lift up the back end of the cot to push the button to bring the carriage up. And that's where it involves, your back muscles and biceps and that type of thing. So technically, we could use that, but it would need the assistance of multiple people.
Worst case scenario.
Yes, if we had a mass casualty right now, I would have no qualms in taking that out because we'd have firefighters there to help, and it could be used. It is functional, but not the way it's designed. Right. The lift system is broken.
Anything else from Mike, anybody? All right, thank you, Mike. Public Works, Engineers Report? Russ?
Yes, good evening. My report tonight, just an update on the 3rd Ave, Laneville, Dryer Street project, and I'll give an update on the bipartisan infrastructure law grant program. Again, on the 3rd Dryer and Laneville project, we're just waiting for spring to come, finish some punch list items and grass restoration. We're working on the geographical information system map updates for Matt, for those 3 projects, getting those into the system. So that's ongoing. Regarding the bipartisan infrastructure law grant, we'll know a little bit more tomorrow. The DOT has a YouTube webinar that's going to cover a lot of the program that would apply to the city of Durand, which is the surface transportation local part of that BIL grant. So we'll have information on that. DOT is telling us that by February 28th, they'll have the STP local applications and the guidance documents available. So then we'll have some more information. What they're telling us right now, that they'll probably confirm with the YouTube video webinar tomorrow, is that the STP local is going to have its own separate application that's different than the bridge program and the standard STP rural and urban. They're talking about it being real similar to the application we wrote last fall for you for Montgomery and the year before, similar to the local road improvement supplementary grant and discretionary. So the application, they said, is going to be similar to that. And also the scoring for that's going to be different than the other part of the program. So the STP local will be a contingent of a review committee in Madison that includes people throughout the state that'll be reviewing the STP local. So that was good to hear. I think I mentioned last time, out of the 1.29 billion, there'll be about 194 million out of the STP local that apply for the city of Durand. Met with Matt and talked about a few projects. So there's some projects in your 5-year capital plan that we'll definitely be talking to you about putting an application in. And again, that application is due June 1st. It's an 80-20 grant program, 80% grant, 20% local. If you decide to apply for an application, you'll need to go through what we talked about the last time, the qualification-based selection process. It's part of the Federal Brooks Act to select a consultant through a solicitation of qualifications to assist with the application and the design services. So if you decide to go for something, that'll be the first order of business you'll be doing through the month of March. Get that process done so you can put an application in by the June 1st deadline date. So it's an exciting time for transportation and bridge projects with that grant program. And any questions regarding project updates or the BIL grant?
Any word back from SSG on our...
No, I did not get anything back, but I did put a courtesy call to SSG, told them what the decision was regarding liquidated damages. Again, like we mentioned throughout the project, with the delays, he was aware of the liquidated damage, the amount and so forth. He just thought we'd have some more sympathy for him and it wouldn't be as high as the number that was there. So, but I reiterated to him, we waited 6 to 7 weeks for your curb contractor to come in and complete the work. If it was a week or two, or as quick as your curb contractor got in and completed the flat work and the curb, if he would have came in right when you had everything ready, you wouldn't even be talking about liquidated damage. You would have made your substantial completion date. So, he talked about what his options are and so forth. I said, you're welcome to come into a council meeting, and present your case and so forth. I don't know if he's going to do that. He said he would think about it, but I don't know at this point if he'll come to a future meeting and talk to you about it or whatever. But we did, for the contract documents, we did prepare a letter similar to the memo we gave you last time that went on city letterhead, and that went out with the payment that covered the contract sections and so forth. And I told him he'd be receiving that when I talked to him over the phone. So no other correspondence or information at this point, but we do receive something. We'll keep you updated.
All right, thank you, Russ.
Yep.
Monthly report, Matt.
Yes, just a couple things. I'd like to have a public works committee meeting before the next council meeting, which make sure I'm on the right month here, from 23rd. Scratch that, be in Florida. for mine.
Cancel trip.
Cancel my trip. We need to have a Public Works Committee meeting to discuss the purchase of the new loader and plow, hopefully before March. I'd like to have it on that council meeting agenda that night, because apparently March 1st, there's a 10% price increase on both.
When are you leaving?
I'm leaving on the 22nd, so could do it the 21st. Or this.
In front of me, but Terry, the mayor.
Steve on it?
Steve's on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either Herb or Travis.
Yeah, Steve, me, Mayor and Terry.
22nd, fine with me.
21st.
For 21st.
I'm living on the 22nd as well.
Oh, nice. We'll meet in the airport and have one.
Shoot for the 21st?
21st.
Like 5 o'clock. 6, whatever works.
Fine with me.
I don't mix.
5?
5.
5 is perfect.
5, yeah. A couple other quick updates, guys are working on, we're grinding and sandblasting our paint, our water filter and our plumbing inside the building, up at number 3. We're also having some issues down at the sewer plant with our digester cover. Not to get too in detail, but what it is a floating cover. The digestion of the sludge creates a gas, and the cover floats in there with gas. It's kind of sunk right now. So we got a few issues with that we're working through. We have completed the hiring process for the new Public Works employee, and I'm pleased to announce that Neil Passy, lives out on Brandon Road in Durand here, will be our new Public Works employee. He'll be starting on February 28th, will be his first day. So he has agreed to the position, and we got an acceptance letter out to him here beginning of this week. So he'll be starting on the 28th of February. Other than that, that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions from anybody?
I got one for you though. President's Day? Is that day?
We're open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure who scribbled closed
Oh,
on
I
that.
have to change that.
Okay.
That's, in the past,
Yeah,
closed,
yeah,
I just changed
yeah.
this.
At least started.
A couple of years. Yeah, so we are open, yes.
Okay, moving on, next item, discussion of possible action regarding the proposed dog park located at R. Hanson Park. Travis or Scott, whichever of you want to talk about that?
I'll take it if you
Go for it.
All right. So the park board and the public welfare committee met last Wednesday, right? Yeah. Basically to talk about this topic and Memorial Park. Leanna Bender, for those that don't know her, is here. She's a county employee, but spearheading the efforts here. A nice presentation that was obviously in your packet for those of you that weren't at the meeting. Ultimately, the committee moved to go forward with basically endorsing the project to give Leanna opportunity to get grants, as was outlined in that paperwork. Essentially, what she was asking of the city was the land, obviously, which we had, and to look into the insurance piece of it. And we did do that as well, the insurance piece. There will be no increase in costs or anything on the insurance side. I really didn't think there was going to be, from the standpoint of crew, we've got an umbrella coverage for our parks. Basically, all our insurance rep asked is that we do some of the verbiage that Leanna provided that other dog parks do, basically. Obviously, to keep your dog, you're responsible and that type of stuff. So, but back to the cost of fencing and some other things that we talked about. Leanna's looking at applying for grants, and so just basically needs the council's go-ahead to start those things. That doesn't mean that this is finalized. I think it's fair to say we'd still like to have some public input at some point, especially from the neighbors. to talk through some of these items. But again, it's fair to say that the committee was all in favor, voted unanimously to go forward, and I think this can be a good project. I'd say just one final thing. We did have a question that came from one of the council members regarding any restrictions on when that property was donated to the city, and I dug through some minutes. Don't see anything, if there were any sort of covenants or anything else that would have been recorded. We didn't find anything with that either. So, and again, at this point, it's basically it's property that the city is able to do. I think the commitment was at the time for a park, and obviously a dog park would fit that. So,
Are they looking at somehow incorporating Hanson name into the park?
that was discussed, yeah, and I think that was certainly something we'd be willing to do. Otherwise, am I missing anything, Anna, as far as anything else you wanted to cover? Or?
I do have the deed for the property if you want to see it too. But no, I also wanted to mention too, yesterday we did go to the Durand Improvement Group meeting and we were adopted by them using their 501c3.
Okay.
So.
All right, great.
Leanna, can you just give just 5 minutes what you want to do up there?
Sure.
What your plans are, just
yeah.
so everybody knows here.
Yeah, so what I kind of spoke about in my presentation is just wanting to put in a 2-acre dog park. All we really need is a fence. We want to do all fundraising through grants or through the community. We're not asking the city for any money. We just want permission to use the land, and then we want liability insurance to cover the park. Scott mentioned that the park is already mowed. We have volunteers that are more than willing to go out and do park maintenance if there are any dog owners that don't go out and take care of their dog waste. Our plan is to continually apply for grants for maintenance, for utility bills. We don't plan on having water out there. We think that's unsanitary. Hopefully have a walking trail around the perimeter, maybe some vegetation, some bushes growing along the outside fence so that homeowners on that side don't have to really deal with the dogs right there.
What kind of hours is it open?
We were hoping to do same hours as like the noise ordinance that the city has. I think it's 10 p.m. that it closes, and that's I think what Claire does as well. They have their dog park closing at 10, and I think that's when their noise ordinance is. So sunrise to 10. Is there?
Well, we have a park ordinance that has us the hours for the parks as well.
Okay.
Which we could probably just add it to that ordinance. I think would be a better spot for it rather than the noise ordinance.
Okay.
I think that's something we should look at. It's closer to hopefully.
What's their park ordinance say?
11.
We're not planning for any lights out there at this point. I mean,
Yeah, but not
possibility, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Maybe in
think
the
we'd have to
future.
look at, light out, like sun up to sundown.
Right,
sort of
right.
thing.
Yeah.
Especially for the, just considered for the privacy of the neighbors, I think it would be, I'm sure they would appreciate it to not have people there after dark.
Kind of gets troublesome in the winter.
Right. That's what I'm saying, if you do, sunrise to sunset or something, I don't know.
You can just squeeze it into that ordinance specifically to ORH, our dog park and have a.
In the midst of the discussion there, on the east end of Grand Street where it says city access, we did talk about putting, like a 80 by 80 foot crush truck that would be paid for.
Yeah, so they wanna, as I talked with the vendor on the phone a few times here, is they actually wanna get their parking lot up into the Lower Hanson Park. So we have to extend the culvert, so it's about $100 a foot. So we figure about 100 feet, without going up there and physically measuring, just using my GIS footage trackers. Figure about 100 feet, that's about 10 grand. That's a little high, but it's a good budget number. And then about another 10, 12 grand will get you a crushed rock driveway, and then probably a 50 by 50 parking pad up in the lot. So if she fundraises, her plan is to fundraise 20 grand to pay for that as well.
But in the meantime, have a very limited 5-6 car gravel parking area. kind of overshoot.
Yeah, and I mean, if you visit other parks like Eau Claire, there's maybe 5, 6 cars at the Eau Claire Dog Park, so I really doubt that Eau Claire, that Durand is going to be hopping.
So what she need, just okay to?
Yeah, to pursue basically that we're in support of the project and basically are okay to pursue grants on behalf of the city. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Before we get that, I mean, just the motivation behind the dog park. Is it for people who have dogs in a small yard, they don't have a place to let them run?
Yep, so I started this because I watched my couch flip over from my dog, and I realized I needed a bigger place for my dog to run. That wasn't 45 minutes away. So, and then talking to other dog owners too, they had small yards with nowhere to let their dog run.
I've had multiple people interested in dogs the last couple of years as well.
My biggest concern was wanting one.
Bushes,
In favor of
something along with the houses.
Yeah.
If I lived there, I would probably be a little concerned.
Yeah,
And some of them have, I've
Yeah, they
noticed
probably
today, there's some, I don't know if Matt wants to show it, but I actually flew the drone there today and took some video and photos.
Yeah.
And, you know, granted, they're probably used to not having many people in their backyard, but there's a lot of space back there too.
If you do a big enough buffer between their property line, a fence, some shrubbery, you got neighbors on each side of you for most of these houses.
Right.
With probably minimal visual blockage between you, so.
Where does that stand?
Yeah, I just looked up the ordinance quick because I didn't remember exactly what it said, but, so basically we can post the hours at each specific park. So the ordinance says, no person shall loiter within any public park or cemetery after the hours of closing within that park or cemetery at the posted time for each park or cemetery. So we wouldn't have to do any ordinance changes, we would just have to post a sign up there that we established.
And we could maybe have summer hours and winter hours. I think that would be easier than going by sun up and sun down.
Right.
It'd be easier just to line this in.
And I highly doubt anyone's going to want to be out there during dark
Right.
anyways.
Oh, you don't know about that. I snowshoe with my dog, I'll never go by night.
Anyone want to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion that we move forward and approve to move forward with the proposed dog park.
Yeah, in sort of support of the dog park.
In support of the dog park at Hanson Park.
Second?
We have a motion on the floor from Councilman Raisler to move forward with trying to find funding for the dog park. Second by Councilmember Schneider. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
At what point do we set up some sort of public, is that after they get some funding, or do we want to do that early in the meeting?
I think that's kind of, I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but I'm thinking probably a little farther down the line.
Okay.
I think you probably want to, from my opinion, you probably want to have some funding established before, so you know for a fact that you're actually going to do it before you get the public real.
But if you look at it from the other side, what's the point of trying to get funding if the public don't want it?
Well, technically,
I mean, or I'm just saying like, if we're going to talk to the homeowners that it butts up to.
Well, I think voluntary will have a public meeting, not specifically just for those people. It's for anybody to come in and tell us what they think.
And again, clearly, I'm going to say this nicely, clearly we care what citizens think, but it's abutted against a park.
Yeah.
Land that was dedicated for a park, I mean, it could be, you know, we could have, you know,
Could have been
Warren Park, could have been, yeah, could have been softball fields, could have been, still could be. I mean, probably might be now at this point, but again, when you're living next to a park, you have to have, because it's been vacant for a number of years, you can't just kind of expect that it's always going to be vacant, so.
It is a park.
Yeah.
It's just a different park.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
All right. Update on the swimming pool project, Scott?
Yeah, the mayor was going to provide this, but obviously I'll do it instead. Matt and the mayor and I, after the last week's meeting that we had with the Parks Board, we met with the pool group. 3 members of the pool group, just to kind of, okay, we got basically a month to go before your deadline for raising money and completing pledges and things of that nature. Still waiting on some money to actually hit the bank, but we know that's forthcoming, and we know the people involved are good for it. So but we just did want to touch base and kind of go through the timeline again with the group to make sure that kind of all on the proverbial same page. I think it's fair to say that we are, and so if everything, at some point, when we get to the meeting at the 23rd, I think as we outlined the meeting on the 9th, that if everything's in place, then we'll be talking about essentially moving forward, and that would be, contacting US Aquatics and getting them rolling with plans and moving forward for the project yet this year to basically begin deconstruction, demolition of the current pool after the season's done this year. So again, as far as we're concerned at this point, everything's on track, but some T's to cross and I's to dot, and so we'll know more
So just
next month.
the tentative timeline then is current pool open for the 2022 season.
Yeah.
As soon as it closes, they start, and by late spring of 2023, we got a new pool.
In a nutshell, Matt, that's pretty much it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we would lose a few weeks. The plan would be to start construction 1st of August, and we would normally shut down the middle of August. So
Yeah.
we would lose 2.5 weeks of pool to start on the 1st of August.
Lose two or 2.5 weeks.
In this year.
This year.
Yeah.
And then it would be open by June of 2023.
Any other questions on the pool project?
I'm sorry, just one other piece. I guess I'm not sure if we were asked or I volunteered us, that Matt and I are going to meet with from the pool group is making a presentation at the Sportsman's Club next Wednesday night. And Matt and I will be there to answer any questions as well. So again, we're not to, two things I guess I would note. We're not at the finish line just yet. Any additional money we get is still going towards the pool. We've talked about some discussions that some of our donors have had regarding, getting reduced lessons or reduced fees or no fees. Again, we keep pushing, and the more money we raise, the better off I think we are to accomplish those things. We know we're going to have additional operational costs. Any donations will help fund that too. So again, we're pushing the pool group to still be out there. And as the mayor noted, it was a successful event on Saturday, and so we hope they're still out there pushing. And so it's not a case of, oh gosh, you guys you got enough money, so I'm no longer interested. No, we'll keep beating the bushes, so to speak.
All right. Any vouchers? Future issues, agenda items.
Main one Matt talked about, so we got that set up at 21st. Would like to get back to that pilot payment from the finance meeting between now and the 23rd. Maybe that would be the night of the 23rd then instead. We don't need that contract.
Well, is that for study here?
Well, primarily the pilot payment, but some other discussions on some of the salary studies and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, should we have a public safety to discuss that over here?
You're still going. You haven't been elevated out of position. Yeah.
Other than his own head.
So we're talking about safety committee meeting when?
Let's talk a little bit more about what exactly, and then what else might be on that.
We need a meeting of the committee with the big building.
That's coming, that's probably gonna be about, push that probably to March, early March, before the next council meeting.
So you guys will talk about safety, finance, we'll figure that out.
Yep.
Public works, we got set. Okay.
From all colors,
I know, it's a rainbow. Hope you're right at the paper.
Jenny has called coordinated amounts.
Yes, culvert is the big one. We were looking at up to, that's an issue.
No, I'm not.
Just checking. I don't want to kick Brian's
Do they go during like power hour?
That's probably the last hour.
Sure. What days do they do that?
It kind of depends on what they
get.
Yeah. It's gotta be like.
You just need to start talking, you need to get back in their little click again.
Well, the problem.
I shouldn't even say it like this. Back into it.
Lauren works.
Yeah.
They're just kind of.
But I still.
Our matter to go with Ainsley and Kendall.
Yep.
You don't need those.
Oh, I don't need to. Well, so they were at that.
You normally sign them before.
Parker and Lauren are in good shape. Those two are working out, they're in great shape, working out.
Right.
Like lifting. Not running.
Right.
But they're still.
Just wondered if
So you have some shape.
Right.
Yeah. And their solids are out, so they're in good shape fast.
she's been running on the treadmill.
Maybe we should do the vouchers.
I don't know how long.
Second. Motion second, to pay the vouchers. Roll call.
Councilmember Gillis.
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman.
Yes.
Councilmember Hooker.
Yes.
Councilmember Raisler.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Scoville.
Yes.
All six in favor.
Okay, motion approved. Entertained motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, adjourn, all in favor? Meeting adjourned.